Hey there folks, and welcome to this video. Here I'm talking about F1's B Races 1 display ahead of the Turkish Grand Prix. For those of you unaware of this, because I know some broadcasters don't show it, either for starting the broadcast right at the start of the race, or they cut to some kind of alternative programming. It's something that started last season in F1 as the end racism gesture. It was organised by the Grand Prix Drivers Association, led at the time by Romain Grosjean and Sebastian Vettel. It was an idea that they had come up with, following the murder of George Floyd by Derek Chauvin, and following on from widespread activism as well as other sports around the world, where before a national anthem, for example, the athletes would kneel as a symbol of opposing racism. That gesture itself, you could arguably say, goes back to the likes of Colin Kaepernick, who knelt during the national anthem when he was playing for the San Francisco 49ers and lost his job because of it. It was originally a gesture that symbolised, in places like the army, a fallen comrade. And yeah, it was then it largely became used as an anti-racism gesture, and then it reignited following the re-emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement last year. Originally, you had 14 drivers kneeling, 6 drivers standing. I've made videos about all these other drivers in the past, the likes of Carlos Sainz, and numerous allegations that tie him and his family to the far right, as well as allegations of racism against him and his family. Charles Leclerc, who has said that he opposes things that are purely symbolic, yet takes part in things like Blackout Tuesday and the social media blackout that happened during the Portuguese Grand Prix this season. And yeah, like I said, I've done lots of videos on the likes of them and Kimi Raikkonen with the mask that was on the F1 store, which had ties to the far right as well. This season, after F1 promoted the end racism message in 2020 following the British Grand Prix, they changed it to the We Races 1 message, which still had end racism as one of its key tenets, but also focused on diversity and inclusion as well as sustainability. For example, you can see behind me a lanyard from the British Grand Prix where I was lucky to be able to work in the paddock, and that's made from sustainable materials. And this season it was 50-50. 10 drivers standing, 10 drivers kneeling. And a lot of them either changed their minds, like Valtteri Bottas, who decides to stand now, but also picked up wearing a shirt which says, amongst other things, Black Lives Matter, but also reaffirms trans rights, wider reaffirmation of LGBT plus rights, and as well as having phrases such as love is love, it says science is trust the science, or science is real, and words to that effect. Of course, we're still living through a pandemic where there are a large amount of people who spread purposefully or unintentionally misinformation and disinformation regarding what's going on in the world. I mean, you can't really see, but on this sim racer wheel that I use, I've got a sticker that shows that I have been vaccinated. But what I really want to talk about today for the last couple of minutes is where F1 races. We've recently seen them confirmed to be racing in Qatar for 2021. And in addition to that, for 2023, they'll be on a 10-year deal. Now, one of the things that F1's criticised for is sports washing. It's a term that means that regimes with, at the very least, questionable records on issues such as human rights host sporting events. There's a wider term of culture washing for if they host cultural events. And they do it to promote their regime as something that is a lot more tolerant and tolerable than what it is. Turkey is arguably an example of that, with Erdogan being just, amongst other things, harsh, ruthless, and authoritarian. You can see it through recent history of F1. We're going to Saudi Arabia this season. There are other races in the Middle East in places such as the UAE and Bahrain. You can also see it in places that are seeking to return to the F1 calendar, even though they have been on it in the past but haven't been able to for the last couple of years, such as China. But you could also think that it hits a bit close to home with races that seem staples of F1. Brazil and Hungary. You could even look further and think about places that are seen as like the homes of motorsport. The United States, France, and the UK. And there's a criticism that's often associated with F1 drivers. Because you have to remember, the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel will still race there. They actually got threatened in Hungary this year for spreading queer positive messages on social media and saying it during the Grand Prix weekend. And people will be like, oh, if you don't like that country, don't race in it. Their contract stipulates you have to race wherever F1 races, barring force majeure such as contracting a virus that has killed millions around the world. And the team also has the obligation where they have to field 2 cars. Otherwise, they can face things such as fines or potentially being thrown out the championship altogether. So they have to race in places like this. And they use their platform to try and spread a more positive and inclusive message, which good for them. Happy to see that. They're doing all they can. What you have to do is ask F1 to do what it can. And it's as simple as that. F1 as an organisation needs to be better and do better. And that's my thoughts. Thank you for watching.